Samhain is over and done with, but I hope you don't mind a story about Samhain. Oh, you don't want to be hearing that old story again. You've heard it so many times. Oh, you do you? And then you'll go to bed and not give me any more trouble? All right. Well, it was back in the old country. I was just a wee lad living with me folks, me mother and me da, and we lived in a cottage with a thatched roof, a shebeen, where we get the word shebang from in this country. And me uncle Seamus lived with us. Now he was a hard-working, sober lad, a very good farmer, and me parents didn't mind him living with us since he was such a great help on the farm. And it was getting to be Samhain, that time of year when the two worlds get close, and they say there's a passage between them and spirits can cross over. And me ma and me da had to go out of town, leaving me with me Uncle Seamus. And it was the afternoon of Samhain, and it was getting darker and darker. And we sat in the dark by the fireplace. And the custom was then that you let your fire die down until it was out. And then you took a stout branch and you went to the bonfire in the town and you got your fire for the next year. So you didn't let your fire go out the whole year, but on Samhain you did. And so it got darker and darker. And finally it was dark out. And my Uncle Seamus said, Georgie, it's time. And I took up a stout pine branch with a good resinous knot on the end. And I went out down the gravel walk and up the hill to the bonfire. And there was people there and people were laughing and lighting their branches. So it was a while before I come back. And when I come back, I walked inside the shebeen, and by the light of the torch, I saw me Uncle Seamus, and he was just sitting in the corner. And I said, why, Uncle Seamus, you look as white as a sheet. You look as white as a, he said, shushing me. And I lit the fire, and it was only when the fire was lit and it was going and it was bright and starting to warm up again. And Seamus signed to me and barred the door that I found out what had happened. While I was gone and he was sitting there in the dark, he heard a muffled clanking outside the door and he looked up, and there in the doorway of the shebeen was the figure of a woman wearing a black dress in an antique style, and all around her wearing chains and rusty chains and padlocks, and the figure had a veil over its head, and it pointed its finger at him, and through the veil said, Seamus McConnell, we wear the chains we forged in life. We wear the chains we forged in life. And he managed to squeak, what do you want with me? What do you be wanting with me? Seamus McConnell, you are alone. You have no wife. You have no home. You have no children. Seamus McConnell, we wear the chains we forged in life. And he said, what women are there? What woman would have me? And she said, what about the widow McConaughey? She's got a nice farm and a nice figure to boot. What about her? Oh, she's rich and she reads books. Isn't she after getting books by that Mr. Charles Dickens all the way from London? What would she want with me? Seamus McConnell, you don't know until you try. Remember, we wear the chains we forged in life. And then the figure turned and disappeared into the night, rattling and clanking. And that's how I found him when I came back, sitting in the dark. Well, my Uncle Seamus was shy. He was shy for an Irishman, and saying that someone was shy for an Irishman is like saying the Atlantic was deep for an ocean. So weren't people surprised when that very next Sunday after church, the Uncle Seamus, the shyest man in the whole county, went up to the widow McConaughey and out of the blue and started talking to her. And didn't tongues wag as week after week they walked out together. And soon the banns were posted. And soon enough they were married. And they were standing on the doorstep of her fine, neat, whitewashed cottage. He was about to carry her in to her own cottage, and she said, "Seamus, me husband, I am yours, and everything I own is yours. But I beg of you one wee favor. If you love me, don't ever open the cupboard in the back." And he agreed. And as far as I know, he kept his word, because it was many years later, after they had both passed away within weeks of each other, that I had to go and clean the cottage. And there in the back was a wee cupboard with a huge rusty padlock on it. I had the key for it, but it took much oil and much twisting before I could get that padlock open. And when I did, I opened that wee cabinet, and there hanging with the rotted shreds of an antique-looking black dress and a pile of old rusty chains and locks.
Ooh.
Now, kids, you've heard the story. Go to bed.